Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Quillcast. Today we will be discussing the competing political narratives and calculus that are surrounding the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Now, before I get too in-depth, I would like to note that this is an ongoing event, and things are unfolding even as I'm recording. So I will come back to the subject in the future, as this has thrown out any previous predictions, narratives, or current polling data that we have for 2020 right out the window. With that in mind, let's get started. Impeachment is a legal question in political wrapping paper. As of last week, Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, and the Speaker of the House has finally thrown down the gauntlet and set the table for impeachment. Despite the House of Representatives currently being in recess for district work periods, subpoenas and scheduling for potential hearings for the impeachment inquiry are already well underway. The Democrats are wasting no time getting impeachment proceedings started, as many of the freshman class in the 2018 midterms were eager to move forward with impeachment prior to the 2018 midterms themselves, using the idea of getting Trump out of office as an opportunity to get themselves elected. Now, today, CNN put out an article written by Stephen Collinson, which details that there is an intense political pressure to move forward with the impeachment inquiry, in part because fears that impeachment discussions and the arguments over whether or not the president should be impeached will loom over the 2020 primaries, as well as the political message of the Democratic nominee. Already by the headline that I'm about to put up, we can see what kind of political vitriol we're in for, and what may be in store for the remainder of Trump's term. Washington at war. Dems aim for speedy impeachment push as Trump threatens whistleblower. Goodness, we can already see where we're going right off the bat now, aren't we? Not as if Trump has been dealing with compromising leaks of phone calls and communications with foreign leaders from some time now in his administration, hasn't he? Moving on, Collinson writes, speed is important because a failure to decide whether the full House will vote on articles of impeachment within months could overshadow Democratic primaries when the party's candidate hopes to be talking about healthcare and economic inequality, issues that preoccupy voters, rather than Trump. Still, any sign that Democrats are rushing could play into GOP claims that they have decided to impeach the president wherever the evidence leads. And this is exactly what Dems are worried about, but they shouldn't be. If the last 3 years of Trump have been anything, it's that the agenda he has set forward to accomplish once getting into office was essentially crippled by the Mueller report. But Democrats are being too cautious, not wanting to give Republicans any ammunition in the political fight ahead towards impeachment. Pelosi has made it very clear that the proceedings on the impeachment inquiry are about the Constitution and the country, not the partisan battles the Democrats have had with Trump in the past. This is Pelosi's political calculus, that she has held her party back from impeachment proceedings in the past, despite the energy and momentum from the 2018 midterms. Only now does she believe that there is something credible here for an investigation and to remove Trump for office. That the president levied money of military aid and assistance, and a quid pro quo agreement for dirt on Joe Biden and his son, as well as CrowdStrike, as the Attorney General Barr has begun investigating the origins of the Mueller report. Now, this is what Pelosi's goal is overall with the impeachment inquiry. It's to gain credibility in the eyes of the public, something that she's going to need in the court of public opinion and partisan battles that surround the impeachment inquiry. However, Pelosi's claim that they are focused solely around the dealings with Ukraine has turned already into total BS. Adam Schiff, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, has stated that he would like to get access to the phone calls that Trump has had with Russian President Vladimir Putin, since these phone calls are already stored on the same secured server that his phone conversation with Ukraine President Zelensky took place on. The Speaker of the House does not have enough control over the various factions and members of her party to maintain this narrative, and she will need to keep them in line going forward. Now, this is something I expect that she will do when the House returns to full session on the 14th of October. This narrative, regardless of whether or not it'll stick, is going to be Nancy's hill to die on, as she stated over the weekend at the Texas Tribune Festival that this is worth losing the House majority in 2020, as the headline from The Hill tells us. Along with this credibility that she is attempting to gain, Nancy Pelosi will also be banking on character attacks and the actions of the administrations to imply that Trump is already guilty, engaging in cover-up activities akin to Watergate, such as trying to make it harder to access the phone calls with foreign leaders by putting them on a secure server, using Trump's ongoing demands to know who the whistleblower is as threats and signals of guilt, along with working off-the-books attorneys. Now, this will be used as an attempt to screen and deflect any attention that Rudy Giuliani or Trump's allies in Congress might place on Biden, although it may not necessarily work, and I'll explain why when we get to Trump's narrative and his political calculus. In fact, it makes it even more humorous when you consider the fact that the Biden campaign put out a statement requesting that Giuliani not be booked or given airtime on the major networks. A request that I believe will go largely unanswered considering all it will take is Trump and his allies to tweet, putting a fire under the ass of the mainstream media to let his personal attorney make his case and defend the president. Plus, any network that decides to get him on is going to get a much-needed ratings boost and benefit from the ad dollars anyway. As for Trump's political calculus and narrative, this is about getting his base out to vote in 2020, especially in the states that were crucial to his election in the first place, by using the current dissatisfaction and mistrust in both Washington and the establishment to show that there was some sort of conspiracy or attempt to push the president out of office, all the while directing the Ukrainian conversation as a platform for discussion about the past political corruption of Joe Biden, which there is definitely an issue to raise when it comes to his son Hunter, who is just short of drowning a girl to having more skeletons in his closet than a Kennedy. As I'll detail below when it comes to the competing narratives, I think Trump will have the advantage in both having messaging and getting that message out there as to who can lay out the most convincing case for or against impeachment to the American people. You see, Trump is simultaneously on the defensive and offensive. He has to defend himself, stating that he's done nothing wrong in his phone call with Volodymyr Zelensky, the newly elected Ukrainian president, and that despite his rhetoric on the whistleblower, he feels that it is justified in the face of being falsely accused of bribery, treason, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, that his demands to know who the whistleblower is just a man wanting to know who his accuser is, although federal protections for whistleblowers complicate this to high heaven. Overall, this is the battle plan that Trump has. Survive impeachment, show how vapid and partisan the Democrats are, and ensure that the Democratic nominee is forced to give his or her opinion on Trump and impeachment instead of their own political message, and have the Republican-controlled Senate prevent his impeachment if it gets that far, and then cruise to an easy re-election. To get there, Trump is banking on the same narrative that he's been pushing for a while, that this is classic Washington corruption, that the swamp is out to get him. He's running an effective line-by-line to the current claims that are being thrown his way. And the irony is that this line-by-line is already coming from pre-existing policy. For instance, in response to the whistleblower report and concerns from security officials that the administration made access to the transcript notes and conversation harder by placing them on a secure server, listing the conversation as secret, originator-controlled dissemination, and no foreign-controlled dissemination, some of the highest forms of classification in the federal government, as an effort to prevent damning information from being revealed, as this article from the Washington Post on September 26 sheds some light as to how far Trump went to hide his phone conversation with Zelensky. Effort to hide Trump's call with Ukrainian leader was part of a broader secrecy effort. While such a headline may be used by those on Pelosi's side of the fence to indicate that Trump was trying to hide his conversation with those on the outside, that he didn't want those knowing that he was asking a foreign leader for dirt on Biden. The article goes on. According to a whistleblower complaint released Thursday, after a 30-minute call between the two presidents in which Trump encouraged an investigation into Democratic presidential contender Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden, and asked Zelensky to work with Attorney General Barr and Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani, White House lawyers took unusual steps to keep the call's contents hidden. The complaint said that the transcript was loaded onto a separate electronic system otherwise used to store and handle classified information of an especially sensitive level. According to the whistleblower, one White House official described this act as an abuse of the electronic system because the call didn't contain anything remotely sensitive from a national security perspective. But Trump has already made it clear that such actions were to prevent leaks, an issue that has plagued the White House since the beginning of the Trump presidency. As the Wall Street Journal tells us on September 28th, embarrassing leaks led to clampdown on Trump's phone records. After blow-up over calls with Mexican Australian leaders, officials moved to greater secrecy, now an issue in an impeachment inquiry. Trump already has a checkered history when it comes to leaks, which has only been fueled by anti-Trump sentiment and government bureaucracy in the intelligence community, which has only sent Trump and his administration into a paranoia about leaks and containing them, giving Trump and his allies the much-needed defense in response to the claim that he was trying to cover it up and having some form of a guilty conscience. The article goes on. Both in Mexico and Australia calls in early 2017 were damaging for the new president. He warned Mexico's then-president, Enrique Peña Nieto, that he might send some U.S. troops to take on the tough hombres driving the Mexican drug trade. In his call with Australia's then-Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, Mr. Trump lashed out at a stupid, disgusting, and horrible Obama-era refugee deal with Australia, under which the U.S. agreed to take up to 1,250 refugees, housed in detention camps on the Pacific island nations of Nauru and Papua New Guinea. Trump has nothing to worry about when it comes to concerns that he has something to hide, when in fact he's simply trying to save face. Trump's main way of conversation is an unfiltered stream of consciousness. This allows Trump to begin an adequate legal and political defense that he wasn't engaging in some kind of conspiracy or cover-up activities. He has already dealt with a long-standing history of leaks that have consistently detracted and undermined his foreign policy initiatives and goals and his administration. In fact, even at the beginning of his presidency, we could see numerous alternate accounts of various government bureaucracies, offices, and departments saying that they were not going to listen to the administration. Alternate Twitter accounts, Instagram, and Facebook pages ran by those in the EPA and Interior Department and even NASA saying that they were a part of the resistance, and listening to Trump was not on their agenda. But this also gives Trump an adequate legal defense against the report itself, because he was doing everything he could to prevent the spread of information that would detract him from having his conversation with a newly elected leader in a country that is vital to U.S. interests being put to the mainstream media and other outlets. And furthermore, it only illustrates with a kind of legal defense that Trump is already beginning to establish with his allies in response to the whistleblower report. That for all intents and purposes, that this report is legal hearsay. In the actual declassified whistleblower report, within the first page it highlights that he does not have first-hand knowledge of this information, that he or she found this from sources ranging from the New York Times, The Hill, and conversations with those close to the administration and participated in the phone call. Now, as I mentioned earlier, impeachment is a legal question wrapped in a political one. And despite the fact that this may be a battle of public opinion, the matter then comes to the fact as to whether or not Congress, through the Senate, who is going to have a hearing if they vote on an article of impeachment proceeding, meaning that this is going to become a criminal case. And the first rule in a criminal case is that hearsay evidence is not admissible in any court of law. Regardless of whether or not that this is a whistleblower report, this was not a first-hand knowledge, the individual has not come forward to testify, and hiding behind a 9-page report that illustrates what he believes to be going on, from reports ranging from the New York Times and The Hill, outlets that are not necessarily for the administration, illustrate that this is not going to stand up in any traditional legal standing. And it's only going to give Trump the necessary narrative boost that he needs to defend that this is simply someone trying to come out and get him. The reason why he has been so adamant to take down the leak in the whistleblower report is because, once again, he is dealing with an embarrassing conversation and an issue where it's being taken out of context and once again being put to the media just as it was at the beginning of his administration. Something that he doesn't want to have a repeat and had such necessary security measures in for the first place. But along with this, Trump is also going to use this to promote himself in 2020 and get the message out to the American people that you can either stick to someone that is trying to get the economy back on track, put America first, and handle with a debilitating trade war with the Chinese and try to reorient the economy to buy more towards American and American manufacturing, or illustrate the fact that the person that he'll most likely be running against had his son on the board of the largest natural gas company in Ukraine for no other reason than that of his last name. Even the left at center Atlantic magazine details how popular this has become as a form of corruption, where former U.S. officials and their progeny will use their policy knowledge and insider information to make bank and skirt around sanctions and other concentrated international efforts. And while the Atlantic article tries to make the defense that Hunter Biden did nothing wrong or illegal by being on this board, it only shows how we've simply accepted that this is okay, that the most popular individuals in our country and the most powerful in the administration surrounding our government are willing to let their children and their families walk away with untold riches because of their positions of power. There's something that feeds very well into Trump's argument of an us versus them mentality, allowing his populist message to be heard to the American people once more, that you can deal with someone who is trying his best to serve the American people, or someone who simply had his family member serve on the board and get paid $50,000 a month for no other reason than the fact of his last name and that his father was Vice President of the United States. Furthermore, when we take a look at the transcript notes between Zelensky and Trump, we can see that when Trump begins to ask for this respective favor in regards to the Ukrainian president asking about defense assistance and buying more Javelin anti-tank weapons, Trump only asks about CrowdStrike, a Silicon Valley security company hired by the DNC to investigate the hacks that took place during the 2016 presidential election. Immediately afterwards, Zelensky doesn't appear to bow or cave to any alleged pressure coming from Trump. Zelensky is more focused on the diplomatic relationship and cooperation between the two nations, as he discussed that he's recalling his ambassador to replace one that is more aligned with his administration and policy goals. I will note, however, that I cannot infer tone from the text here, but it does seem to be that there is no apparent caving into pressure from the Ukrainian president at all, other than acknowledging that Trump likes to talk about himself. The first half of the notes of the transcript call is Zelensky kissing Trump's ass on their election wins anyway, stating that he learned a lot from Trump in the first place on beating the Ukrainian establishment in their own politics. It's important to keep in mind that Zelensky has no prior political experience. He only played as a president on a television show called For the People, which is quite ironic when you consider where he is now. With all of this in mind, we can now see the emerging political calculus and narratives between the Trump administration and his Republican allies and Nancy Pelosi in the House of Representatives in the Democratic Party. We see that Nancy Pelosi is going to strive for a form of credibility and indicting Trump on his character, while at the same time trying to stay focused on the issues of Ukraine and trying to get dirt on Joe Biden, although she will struggle in trying to control Adam Schiff and other more progressive members of the Democratic Party in the House, who have been itching for impeachment since the 2018 midterm elections. Trump, on the other hand, will continue to pursue his populist message, arguing that he is simply putting up an us versus them fight, saying that those with Biden and the Obama administration were simply enriching themselves while not serving American interests, while at the same time establishing a legal defense that he was simply trying to protect his administration's policy goals from leaks, and that the legal defense that he's already establishing is hearsay from the whistleblower, who lacked first-hand knowledge and even admits this in the declassified whistleblower complaint. So overall, this is what we're going to be seeing, and as events unfold, I'll be sure to monitor it and continue to update on what's currently going on in impeachment in upcoming videos ahead. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for listening and made it this far. Be sure to like and subscribe to the video and of course share it and give myself a shout out on whatever platforms that you guys are on. Whatever you guys do out there, I greatly appreciate it. And if you're interested in more of this kind of content, be sure to leave a comment down below. I will have links in the description to all of the articles I've cited as well as the Tim Fool video that I mentioned. So, again, I will see you all tomorrow. I think I'll probably have a little more off-the-cuff analysis, probably not so much in depth like I did today, but we'll see how it goes. I really had a fun time editing and putting this video together. I really enjoy political conversation. So, be sure to give your guys a like and a subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thanks for tuning into the Quillcast, and you guys have a good night.